We're going to wait a couple minutes. I know that the superintendent is on campus, so we'll wait a couple minutes to get started. Get started. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the school board meeting this Tuesday, July 17th, 2018. If you wish to speak during the hearing of citizens, please pick up a card in the back of the chambers, print your name and topic clearly, and return the card to our board assistant, Kathy Tompkins. At the appropriate time, I will call you up to speak. Please stand for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome the STAR coordinator, Patricia McGraw, and the STAR students in the audience today. Can you guys wave? STAR stands for Students Taking Active Roles, which is a training program created to encourage youth to take active roles in their community. I'd like to invite the superintendent and any available board members to stay after this meeting to meet with the students for questions and answers. We have no special presentations beyond introducing our STAR students. The superintendent, is there a superintendent report?
Yes, there is. I'd like to invite Dr. Laura Kingsley to come forward just for a short overview of our academic performance from 2017-18.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Bowden, Mr. Hardy. We're excited about our dashboard, our data.
It's not on, maybe?
It is. We're very excited. Are we still excited?
We're still excited, just can't hear you on the mic side.
Come back and just change the angle on it. There you go. Back.
Muscles.
Mic check.
I'm gonna break it. It doesn't move, Todd. Okay, I'll just talk very loud. No, it's this way. I'll talk loudly. We are excited about our data dashboard, as you all know, and Denise and her team have the best overview.
This whole thing is the microphone, so just speak up.
Okay.
You can do it.
They have a great overview that they're going to show you that I know board members you can see on your computer screen, and the audience hopefully can see through the screens. This is our district grade data dashboard, and Denise, I know you're going to mention what we're doing with school grades, so take it over.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the board. I'll lean forward, and I can see my notes better, too. Members of the board, Mr. Hardy, Superintendent Bowden, thank you for having us here today to display and we're very proud of our district grade dashboard. Before I start, though, I want to thank the Patterson Foundation again, because without them, we wouldn't have the manpower to work on these type of projects, and this is a very exciting one. I also, even though he's embarrassed when I do this, Mr. James Ferrara, he really designed this dashboard. He's sitting right here. Thank you, James. We're going to talk about the 11 elements of school grade very quickly. George is going to go over them, and then I'm just going to hit some of the highlights.
Okay, so this dashboard is available on the website, and if we can go to the screen, you'll see that we have the 11 components listed on this dashboard, and it's filtered by various categories, so you can filter by school, grade, gender, etc. But what I want to point out is that for the first column, it's about ELA, so that's English Language Arts, and the achievement level 3 or plus means that they scored at the proficient level or higher. So for the 17-18 year, we had 67% of our students that scored level 3 or higher. The learning gains compares the scores from 17-18 school year to the 16-17. So we had 59% that made learning gains for this year. The lowest 25% learning gains actually looks back from the 16-17 year. The students that scored at the lowest 25%, what was the percentage that made learning gains? So we had 45% for this year. As we move into the second column, it's about math. So the math would include your FSA math grades 3 through 8, but also Algebra 1 and geometry. So again, the same type of format as ELA. We have the first area, which talks about the level 3 or higher that the students performed, so at 73%. And as we go down, we can see that the math percent learning gains, again comparing to the scores from the prior year, we had 64% that made a learning gain. And the math lowest 25%, 52% of those students made learning gains. The third column, science achievement level 3 or higher. This is the state science grade 5, grade 8 test plus biology EOC. So 69% of those students received a level 3 or higher. Social studies include civics for the middle schools, U.S. history for the high schools. We had 80% that received a level 3 or higher on those assessments. The middle school acceleration rate. So these are students in the middle school grade level that are taking high school equivalent courses that have an EOC. So for the most part, we're talking about Algebra 1, geometry, also high school equivalent industry certifications. So we tried to push that area, and 74% received a level 3 or higher. Graduation rate, based on the state's computation for graduation on a prior year, this is lag data, so this is for last year's cohort, 86% were in that graduation rate. College career acceleration, these are high school students who are taking advanced coursework, AP, IB, AC certifications, industry certifications also. 65% of those students receive the passing score. So when we take all 11 components, we look at the district grade, they compile it together. For this year, we received a 67%. So we maintained the A and actually increased a few points from the prior year.
Yep, great job.
Could I ask a question? What was the red line?
The red line is 62%. You would have to be 62% for an A. So we're at total 67%, which is quite a bit above the A.
And the state sets that 62%.
Correct. In fact, that box right there at the bottom says an A is 62% or higher, and so forth down. In the very center, underneath the 67. So you can see we're quite a few points above that now, which is nice.
Sorry, Mrs. Goodwin?
The only two that I'm really concerned about, or the two that I'm most concerned about, is the ELA lowest 25% and the lowest 25% learning gains.
Mm-hmm. And I can talk about those a little bit. I'm just going to hit some highlights, and I'm going to get right back to that. Is that okay? You can see if you toggle back on top, that's why a grade is, the dashboard is so wonderful. You can toggle back up here on school year, and you can, if you went back and forth, you would see us over the last couple of years. The first year that we ever had a full school grade with all components was 15-16 with the FSA, the newer test. When you look back from 16-17 to 17-18, you can, or even from 15-16 forward, you can see that we made strides in every area. Biggest being middle school acceleration, where we had a 19-point gain from 2016. Mathematics learning gain for the lowest quartile has been steadily increasing over time. time. The graduation rate has increased 7 points since 2016. Our total percentage points rounds to over 4 points, but 5.5 points from 16. And our total points increased 57 since the end of 16. So in every area, we've increased. Now, let's go back to that quartile and look at it a little bit. I know that it's a challenge. Our lowest quartile, as George explained, is those children that scored in the lowest quartile the year prior, and we're monitoring their growth. When you look at that component and you look across the state at other districts, you'll soon see that all districts, or many, many districts, struggle with that component. Not that it's something we need to overlook. It is an area of focus, but I wanted to check, because the first thing we do is see how other districts deal with this, and you can see that we're tied with some very high-performing districts like St. John's in these areas. So I think we have work to do, but I don't think we're the only ones. So as a state, the other thing I want to say is about learning gain. Learning gain, people often think of as it has to be 1 year's growth. But that's not so with our lowest performing students. Our lowest performing students could be 2 years behind. So we need accelerated performance among students that are our weakest. So that's a challenge, and that's why inherently it's a challenge that we have to address going forward. Compared to the state, as I look at each one of these components, we did very, very well. Depending on how you rank, and George and I differ in that conversation, but depending on how you mathematically rank, we are second in ELA achievement. We are second in ELA learning gain. We rank third in mathematics achievement and mathematics learning gain. We rank fourth in science and social studies and in the total points earned. And although we're concerned about that quartile, we are tied with 7 other counties there. So it's something that is our area, and you're very astute to bring that forward, something we need to look at. I was tasked, Natalie and I were tasked a couple months ago to look at iReady, and I went back and looked at our iReady predictions compared, and they were very, very close in all areas, under 5 points, except for math in 8th grade, which is sort of skewed because we have many of those students taking algebra. But I was happy to see that we're still along that trend. 2 things, and I'll close with this. We love these dashboards. I hope everybody, this is out on our website. Everybody goes and looks on how our schools are performing, how well they're doing. We will have 2 new dashboards coming soon, and this is the school grade calculations. They're slightly different because a child can be in the district grade and not in the school grade if they weren't at the school for the whole year. What's very exciting about these 2 new dashboards is they will be able to drill down to the teacher level. So the teachers will be able to see how the past students did last year, and then when we roll the schedule forward and they have their new classes sitting in front of them, they'll be able to log in and see how those students did the prior year. So they'll have a little history on the students that first day of school. So I'm excited about that. Thank you, and if there are any questions, we'll leave you.
Don't go anywhere, and thank you very much. Mr. Robinson?
Thank you, Dr. Denise. I really appreciate that. Do you have it broken down by race?
The data is here available. It is broken down on the slicers and the dicers. You could go up and break it down by ethnicity.
But do you know offhand how the African Americans did compared to the state?
We can show you here.
Did they exceed the state?
This will be for ours.
That's ours.
Yeah, we don't have the state data here, but we did look a little bit about achievement gap and look about narrowing it. And part of the confounding with it is that as we increase, our special populations increase as well. So although we're both getting better, we're not necessarily narrowing that gap. But we can have more data for that.
I'm curious about the, like Jane, about the people in the lowest quartile.
Absolutely.
And specifically, Africans, Americans, because we don't perform as well in that group as we do in comparison to the state as we do in other groups. So.
And we can provide that data for you.
Thank you, Denise. I know you will.
Can I add to that? So when you look at the data that Denise has provided, it's ironic. We were concerned about third grade ELA scores, and the third grade ELA scores actually closed the gap better than any other grade level, and in most areas, including African American. So, you know, data is complex. The reasons for it are complex. And, you know, I love this phrase from Mencken: for every complex problem, someone has a simple solution, and it's wrong. And so we're trying to avoid simple solutions. If I could just add to this, I know Chris and Kelly and their team and all of the elementary principals have gotten together and are implementing some plans. What went wrong in the places where things went wrong? One of the things that they are looking at is strategically intervening. So taking all of the resources that they have available to them, staff resources, the ELA specialists, the math specialists, the social studies science, and being very strategic by tiering the support needed at certain schools. So you have our C schools. They will get the most intensive support. And what does that look like? It looks like we're really good at looking at data. I think we've had her leadership for so long. We are so good. Principals, school staffs, we're really good at looking at data. And Mr. Robinson, I'll never forget when you asked at one of the workshops, you said, okay, so you have iReady AP2. Here's what it says. Well, guess what? That's what it was in the end for FSA. We were 2 points away.
1 point.
In elementary, one area I think was 2 points, but
math was 2.
So what do? This is the area that we need our teachers to have additional support. We know what it looks like, and we don't always know what do we do when a child is not getting it. So what kind of interventions can we provide? Interventions take time. They take time away from the rest of the class, but we need to provide the support to our teachers who need to provide support to our kids. But the good thing is we all have a growth mindset. So we believe that if we struggle, that's just learning. We want our kids to feel that. Where they fail, we just say, hey, failure is learning. So I hope that we all can adopt that. I know our principals are working hard on that kind of attitude.
I know making mistakes is part of the learning process. But Dr. Bowden has pointed out that there are multiple ways to close the achievement gap, and the way you don't want to close the achievement, I think you have said it too, but I just remember Dr. Bowden saying it. You don't want to close the achievement gap by having the people at the top, the whites, by going down. But since we went down 3% total overall, the optimal way, I think the inference from Dr. Bowden is that the way we want to close the achievement gap is by having the African Americans increase at a rate higher than the top.
Absolutely.
And so when you said the achievement gap closed, I'm asking, was it done the optimal way, or was it done because we went down by 3? Was the achievement gap closed because the whites went down, or did the achievement gap close because the blacks went up?
In almost every case,
they both went up. So
everybody went up.
So we can't say that they closed because both are going up.
I look forward to seeing that data.
That's exciting.
You'll
Thank
enjoy
you.
it.
I will.
Mrs. Brown.
Yeah, I want to see that growth too, but not just for our African American, but all of our minorities we need to be looking at that. But if I'm a parent, I guess this is kind of rhetorical for us, but if I'm a parent out there looking or watching this today, or and I want to access this. As a parent, how deep can I go? Can I look to see, well, here's what the district did. Can I see, here's what my school did, here's what my teacher did, here's what my student did? Which one of those things can a parent access, or can they access this?
By going directly to the district dashboard, they can go down to the school level Once we get to the teacher and then the student level, we have levels of security. It's not even on this dashboard, but in other dashboards we build, we get to the point when it's student data that we cannot have that in the public domain because it's confidential against FERPA law. So right now, they can go out to the website. They can click on a dial up in the corner. It looks a little like an art palette, and they can get right to our existing dashboards.
If a parent wanted it on their child, they could meet with the teacher or
They could
someone with the
contact the
school.
school, or if they came and called our office, as long as the appropriate identification is in place, we could talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I know I've said this a number of times. I think this is great. I love seeing the evolution of it. I know that most recently I had people looking at data across the state and were very pleased to be able to access Sarasota's data and see it transparently. And I think it made me feel very great that this is Sarasota County. And I know that this is a lot of work, and we are very grateful for the Patterson Foundation because this is something that I think really makes Sarasota different, and it's transparent, it's easily accessed, and it's in a format which I know when we were looking at this was, how we are so used to certain jargon, but making sure it's in a layman's term so anyone who's looking at it really can dissect it. I think you guys have done a great job, and I know it's a work in progress and continued, so thank you very much. Great work.
I want to thank our administration for allowing it, Dr. Roker, Dr. Kingsley, and Dr. Bowden.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
We need to change the colors.
Wait, it will always come up if we don't change the colors. Dr. Bowden, are there any other items on your superintendent's report?
No, but before I yield the floor, there are a number of individuals in the audience I just want to introduce to you. We do have in attendance today Mr. Jeff Maltzby. Jeff, if you would stand and allow us to recognize you.
You can come up.
All right, Jeff, I was just going to have you stand and wave. They want to hear you talk, so come say hello.
Welcome to Sarasota County School Board.
Jeff appears on your personnel transaction report. He is our selection for our new Chief Operating Officer and Assistant Superintendent. He comes to us by way of Sarasota County government. His proposed start date is Monday, the 23rd. Mr. Maltzby.
Thank you all very much, Dr. Bowden. Council, I'm going to say commissioners, so please,
no worries.
You gotta bear with me a little bit until I get used to the transition. But school board members, Mr. Hardy, it is truly an honor for me to be joining this wonderful team that you already have in place. I look forward to earning my place as a contributing member to this team and maintaining the level of excellence that this district has already established for itself. I'm thankful that Mr. Scott Limpy has left some formidable shoes for me to fill, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities, again, to continue the level of excellence that this district has already established for itself. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that a few of my former colleagues from Sarasota County government are in the audience, and I'm thankful that they are here to support me, and I'm looking forward to the honor and the pleasure of serving you in this capacity. Thank you.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you. Mr. Robinson and then Mrs. Goodwin.
Good news is you're going to get hired. The bad news is you still have to work with a Robinson because I know you work with my wife. I just wanted to welcome you and thank you. And I do want to make sure, if you haven't already known this, starting a week from Monday, you have such an incredible, great organization and great staff underneath you and supporting you, and they do such a wonderful job, and they do such a wonderful job that sometimes we take them for granted and forget about them. But it's your job to come in and to remind us all the great things, all the meals that are done every single day. Every time kids picked up, dropped off, facilities. I mean, you guys make it so that everybody else can make sure that their job is done well. And so I look forward to you continuing that excellence.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, Jeff, I'm really happy to see you here. Jeff and I have known each other for quite a long time, and we met in a volunteer capacity at the YMCA in Sarasota, serving on the board, and I've known him in the community through baseball and through other things, and know what a great communicator you are and what a great job you've done economically and in other facets of your support. I know that the county really hated to lose you. I talked to Charles Hines about that at length and others, and I just want to say that their loss is our gain, and I'm so happy that you'll be working with us and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Zucker.
Hi, Jeff. I, too, am really pleased that you're the one that has taken the position. When Dr. Bowden talked to me about it, I said, oh, yes, you have to get him. He's great. So we've been around a little bit, know each other a little bit, and I'm very pleased that you will be taking over for Scott's position. I did speak with him today. He'll be around until the 1st of August, and I understand he's already reached out to you and spent some time with you. So you're on the job before you're before you're officially here. Again, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Brown.
I, too, want to welcome you, and yes, you do have formidable shoes to fill, because I've come to rely so much on Mr. Limpy and what he does for us. So we have high expectations for what you'll do, but I just want to let you know that he often came in under budget on projects. Just keep that in the back of your hat. Oh, yeah, behind budget and ahead of schedule. Yes, thank you.
Well, welcome. And I'm glad that you had the opportunity to come forward. Yeah, no pressure. But truly, to echo what Mr. Robinson said and many of the other things, Scott Limpy was a tremendous asset to this community, but we were very excited to have you join our team. And as like Mr. Robinson said, there's a great team throughout this district, and I know that you'll be working together collaboratively with everything, and anything that we can do, we are here to help you be successful. So welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Miss and
Yes.
Dr. Bowden.
We also have in attendance, appearing on your personnel transaction report, Paul Grohowski. Paul, if you'd please stand. You want Paul at the podium also? Yep. All right. I was going to let you guys off the hook, but Paul is our selection for Chief of Police. He looks like a Chief of Police, doesn't he?
Indeed.
It's a bad haircut.
You don't have big shoes to fill. You have big shoes to create. And so we want to welcome Paul to our organization. Paul?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Bowden, Mr. Hardy, members of the public, I am standing humbly before you as your Chief of Police to lead your police department, whose sole purpose is to provide a safe environment for our students, our community students, for our teachers to teach, and for our faculty members to work within an environment that is dedicated to our community. I guess the introductions come last, but I'm the father of 4. I'm a parent. I know what the fear is like, what it's like in this environment. Been a cop for 20-something years, a SWAT team member, trained for the worst things that can happen in places like this. This is not going to happen here. It's not on our watch. And it's not just me. It's not just the members of the team that we're compiling. It's a team multifaceted approach, 3-pronged. The hardening efforts that are going through, what Executive Director Andreas has put forth before I walked in the door, the vision of Dr. Bowden to establish a police department, and working with mental health professionals to prevent something from happening. We're hardening the target. We're providing a level of service unprecedented, something you'll never see before. And hopefully, we create a model that can be duplicated on a national scale. That's our goals. So thank you. I am humbly before you.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown.
Yes, to say you've got a rough job. Yeah, and you're coming in, and there's a lot of angst in the community. Sure. And, to be honest, there are some people out there hoping you'll fail. But we're here for you. And I mean, we need you to succeed. Our children do. And I know that is your goal. I understand that you met with all of the chiefs of police in the county. Was it last week or something? Could you tell us how that went? Or
I've had 4 successive meetings with members of our municipal partners, our local partners, our state partners, our sheriff's command staff. The sheriff's been very inviting. I sat with his command staff last week. We are working as a team between municipal and county officials. They are doing wonderful things to help us get on board and be successful. So the relationship building, no person can do it alone, no department can do it alone. It requires the entire community's approach from a law enforcement perspective.
So it'll be a partnership, but we're not going to just take over everything. We're still going to be working with all of them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, we love our partners and our policing entities in Sarasota County, the sheriff and others, and we really thank them for all of their help. But we are really happy to have you, and we know that this gives us the alignment that we need in the school district to do those things to make sure that we harden the exterior of the buildings and we soften the interior, which is what I normally say, because the social and emotional well-being of these students is something that we really need to consider and need to make sure that we support and take a look at. We have a lot of children who are hurting, who have been traumatically involved in situations that they're carrying around with them, and of course to be proactive on the front end is exactly what we all need to do. So I want to say welcome. I've had an opportunity to sit down with you and have a good chat, and I'm very excited about your being here. I think Mr. Andreas has done a remarkable job, and the two of you together make a wonderful team and will lead our school district so that our parents and our students can feel safe. I never went to school worried about the safety that I felt at schools, and some of our children do today. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
I also want to welcome you, and I want to echo something I said earlier, is that we're here to make you successful. And so despite even my own personal concerns of an internal police department, as we move forward, that is what we're here to do. And I know that your mission is to keep our students safe and our staff safe. So I welcome you with open arms and look forward to working together.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Dr. Bowden?
And any other questions for Paul? Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
All right, so the third individual I want to recognize is Miss Carol Brown. Miss Brown is joining us from Hillsborough County. I have to tell you, I have a number of friends from the time that I spent in Hillsborough County, and they're rather unhappy with me. She was an up-and-coming leader in their district. Matter of fact, when I spoke with their superintendent, the response was, we were looking for a role for her in our district office, and I'm not real happy that because of their budget, they were unable to find a position for her, but their loss is our gain. We are so excited. She's coming into the role of Director of Leadership Development. We recognize the role that leadership plays in our schools, and she will be the point person for our development efforts, not only for our principals to make sure that they grow and develop, but our assistant principals who aspire to be principals, our teachers who aspire to be assistant principals, and to be our eyes and ears and keep us abreast of the latest research. And I expect that at least on a weekly basis, she's going to put a journal article in front of me and say, hey, did you see this? That she's going to be our academic and do lots of things as we move forward. One of her roles will be to also do some special projects for us, and we'll be talking to you in the coming months about pursuing district-level accreditation through Southern Association. Currently, we do that at our individual high schools. We're kind of behind the curve on that. Most districts of our size have pursued accreditation at the district level, and Ms. Brown will be our point person as we pursue that initial accreditation from the Southern Association. She will be working in conjunction. If you're trying to picture the role, that position was last filled by Ms. Wendy Katz. Dr. Katz has agreed to stay on board in transition. As a matter of fact, I signed off on a contract with her today to work to make sure that we transition all of our existing leadership programs, which have been recognized by the state as models, to make sure that Ms. Brown does not come in cold, but there's a transition from Dr. Katz's leadership to Mrs. Brown's leadership. And so with that having said, welcome.
Thank you. I am very excited to be a part of Sarasota County. It is an honor to be here with you guys today. I am thrilled to be working with your principals in your county, developing a pipeline, coaching and supporting and developing them through NPD. So I'm excited.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brown.
Yes, I'd like to welcome you too, and point out, I know there was the one time there was some furor over, you put on all these administrators. Well, I look at that, we didn't add a bunch of administrators so much as we promoted a bunch of teachers, because we take them inside, and rather than these teachers who want a leadership position, seeing them leave and go to another county, we keep them here and we promote them from in and continue to coach them through. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I'm proud that we do that, and I know our teachers are proud of that too, that if they want to aspire to something more, we're ready to help them go there. And we've got a lot of teachers that want help and want to go more, so embrace them.
I will.
Help them fly.
I'll be their mother.
Thank you. Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, Mrs. Brown, welcome to Sarasota County. I was having a meeting this morning with Wilma Hamilton, who is one of our former superintendents, and she was telling me about you. And so I'm really delighted to meet you. Professional development is very important to our district. We cannot forget to do professional development in everything that we do, and we know how important that is. One of my real concerns is hiring new teachers. And then when we hire a new teacher and they come into our district, that they stay more than 5 years. And what is it, 40% of the teachers that are hired statewide now only last for about 5 years. So I don't know if mentoring, I don't know what we can do to help them, but I think we need to do more in the early years of development for these teachers so that we can keep them. Because we have a problem statewide, we have a problem in our small counties with not being able to find teachers that want to go to the small counties. So it's a real concern, and we want to take care of our teachers. We want to make them happy and have a long career with us. So I'm looking for you to do some of that, and look forward to working with you and getting to know you better. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mrs. Zucker.
Hi.
I'm always glad to see someone who's coming in and willing to, and has the knowledge and willing to work for professional development. And I'm really glad to hear that Dr. Katz will be here helping you learn the ropes here, because she has been a magnificent a magnificent professional development person, and she's done great things for all of our principals and assistant principals that we currently have. So I'm glad to see that there is someone like you that will fulfill her role. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mrs. Brown. It was lovely meeting you in the elevator earlier today. Something that I actually was discussing with the superintendent prior to this and included in the evaluation was that component of professional development as we look at our human resources department and we look at, retention and retaining high quality teachers. There's so many elements, but really working collaboratively with all various stakeholders and having them part of that discussion so that, the best part about as a professional, not, wanting to be inspired and empowered to take on those different courses to expand your role. So I look forward to seeing your work and your collaboration with all the stakeholders to make it a very successful program. So welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Very good. I apologize and actually should have done this earlier. Before we move to hearing of citizens, I know that there were contracts added at the last minute, which I'm looking forward to ratifying, hopefully. But I did want to leave that the superintendent's evaluation, which includes a number of different items, that we move that to the last item of business.
I agree.
Is there any objection to that?
Oh, I agree.
Seeing none, that means that we will be moving item number 39 to the last item of business, and item 48 to 42 will move up. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you. That's a good deal. And we will move to hearing of citizens. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. When the time flashes yellow, 1 minute remains and you need to begin to summarize. You must stop speaking when the buzzer rings. Please note that respect for divergent viewpoints and civility will be shown at every board meeting. Whether you agree or disagree with a speaker, you should listen politely and respectfully without making any sounds of approval or disapproval, including clapping. I have 3 cards this afternoon. First up, Bear Mancini.
My name is Bear Mancini, and I'm a student at Pine View School. So Superintendent Dr. Bowden is up for review or evaluation, and I would like to express my opinion. I understand that I'm not in the position to...
He's okay.
I understand that I'm not in the position to make an accurate or precise assessment on the superintendent's overall performance, so I'm only speaking from my personal experience with him. I met Superintendent Dr. Bowden back when he was a candidate for superintendent, along with the 2 other candidates at the time. I wanted to change how my school dealt with the half-staff flag and the presidential proclamation. My school would lower the flag but would not read the presidential proclamation, and the flag would become misunderstood and would end up being disrespected by the students. On days which the flag was half-staff, I wanted to go on the morning announcements and read that presidential proclamation. So I went to each of the superintendent candidates with my issue. 2 of the candidates were intrigued, amused, but very vague about it. Dr. Bowden was the only candidate that gave me a promise. He said when he became superintendent, he would initiate a district-wide change and have the presidential proclamation read in every school. Dr. Bowden was then chosen for superintendent that spring, and less than a month later, the flag was lowered to half-staff for the internment of astronaut John Glenn. I read the presidential proclamation that day, and when I returned to class, my fellow students cheered. Dr. Bowden kept his promise to me. Across the district, students are now educated and informed on what it means when our nation's flag goes half-staff. I thank you, Dr. Bowden, as a Scout, student, and proud American. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. I know we don't normally speak, but I can't leave this one. I'll take a point of privilege here. But I appreciated when Bear emailed that out to all of the board members. First and foremost, I love that you brought that forward. I think that our district's better for it, so I applaud you for bringing that forward, and thank you, Dr. Bowden, for listening. But thank you again. Next up is Jennifer Moore. Hello.
Well, that's a shame I have to go after. To say that's wonderful. I'm honored to be here with all of you today. I'm going to shake things up a little bit, if I may. I wanted to know what process is. I am so very proud of our school system, and I can tell you that I've raised my daughter from all the way through 12th grade, and I'm about to embark on another journey with my granddaughter. And I've been very, very proud of this school system. But something came up on actually social media that prompted me to dig a little bit and wanted to know if, since we have such a very strong sense of security, we definitely want security in our school system. And I thank you so much for hardening our schools, for doing everything you can for security. But my question is, I would have to be background checked, every teacher, administrator, but have any of you been background checked? And I'm sure you have, Mr. Bowden, because you have actually worked in the school system. And the reason why I said that is because something came up on social media where someone was, I thought, a little inappropriate towards one of the school board members. Regardless if you agree with them or not, we should respect each of you. And this particular person was a candidate. So what prompted me, something was of a red flag, and so I went down to the courthouse and I found that this person who was actually running against one of you has a criminal background. So I wanted to show up here today to ask if everybody here who's working with the school system, if we are doing everything we can to protect our children who are sitting in the seats. I believe character and integrity and even how you treat each other means everything. I think you are the highest example of truly anybody in the community, above anybody. You are protecting our children. So what are we doing and what is the process for background checks for you? And for those candidates coming in who may or may not take one of your seats. It's a concern, and I wanted to mention that. Maybe it needs to go on at a legislative level, but it was a great concern to me that I did find there is a candidate who has a criminal background. Now, granted, it's not murder, but it is a criminal background. It is something of concern, of great character and integrity. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that question, but have you been background checked other than Mr. Bowden?
Doctor, I'm happy to answer even since I followed. So currently, constitutional officers do not. It's not required in statute, and it actually has been raised a number of times. I know I personally have been background checked for other reasons, but as far as from a statute standpoint, it is not, and would have to be something done at the legislative or constitutional level.
Okay.
Dr. Bowden?
And to go a little bit further, as strange as it sounds, board members are not provided unsupervised access to student populations. So anytime a board member is interacting with students, there is a faculty member or a member of staff there. And so as you go through our levels of screening, it seems strange, but unless they have gone through a background check, they cannot be alone with students as a protective measure.
I just find the irony in it that of all the people of the greatest integrity making decisions for security, that you don't have to be back.
No, that's not lost at all.
No disrespect, and I'm not accusing it.
No. I actually appreciate you bringing it forward. And again, this is non-customary for us to discuss during hearing of citizens, and perhaps at the comment section we can bring it forward to discuss as whether, because just because it's not required does not mean it's not something we can institute here. I think before it had been discussed as who ultimately, it would be a good faith action because the oversight of the board at that point really who ultimately does. So if it wasn't legislatively required.
It is up to the citizens to do their homework and
that is indeed correct.
Find that out. That's what I wanted to say.
I'm background checked.
Mrs. Brown, I will, again, this is, hold on, excuse me one second. Mrs. Brown, I know you wanted to comment. Mrs. Zucker, you go ahead, and then we'll move on to the next hearing of citizens.
Basically, she gave my comment. I think it's up to the citizens to check the candidates that are running. And I know it's hard, but or even the press.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I just think that citizens like myself, I assumed that that was the case. All these years, I've lived in Sarasota County for 30 years, and I never knew that until recently. So
thank you very
so
much
for your time.
Mrs. Zucker, did you have something? No. Okay, thank you. Next up is Carol Lerner.
Good afternoon. I'm here today as the chair of Protect Our Public Schools, Minnesota, we call it POPS for short, to urge action on Amendment 8. POPS sees Amendment 8 on the Florida November 6th ballot as a severe threat to public education here in Sarasota and throughout the state of Florida. An independent authorizer, as established in Amendment 8, would bypass local districts in the approval of charter schools, yet hold districts liable for the funding of these schools. For the past 2 years, the Sarasota School Board successfully rejected 2 applications of charter schools managed by for-profit corporations, Avant-Garde and Academica, schools that did not meet Sarasota's standards and schools that did not fit into our community. Passage of this amendment will mean that an independent authorizer could approve an unlimited number of these for-profit managed charter schools and other charter schools too, without any local input. Sarasota will likely end up looking like Miami-Dade, which now has 130 mostly for-profit corporate charter schools, including over 50 run by Academica alone. As many critics of Amendment 8 have made clear, the presentation of Amendment 8 on the ballot is at best confusing and at worst probably unconstitutional, as a recent lawsuit by Florida League of Women Voters indicated. The Florida Constitution Revision Commission, under the urgings of the amendment's chief architect, Erica Donalds, a leader in the Florida Coalition of School Board Members, bundled this amendment with 2 less controversial, unrelated amendments on civic education and school board member term limits, turning them into a single amendment to be voted in its entirety. The provision dealing with school authorization is, according to the League's suit, intentionally misleading because it doesn't directly explain to voters that the amendment is designed to circumvent local control and intentionally leaves out the word charter. POPS is now helping to form a No on Amendment 8 coalition in Sarasota and Manatee counties. We applaud that the Sarasota School Board is considering today the adoption of the Florida School Board Association resolution opposing Amendment 8, and we urge its passage. But resolutions are not enough. We also ask that the Sarasota School District join POPS and other organizations in the No on Amendment 8 Coalition to educate parents, students, and the public on the impact of its passage on our schools in Sarasota. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes hearing of citizens. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? All members vote on the consent agenda.
Maybe, maybe not.
We would have been done if we did a voice vote.
Click it.
I agree. And waiting. And the motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the next item of new business, item number 34, approval to advertise changes to all the policies in Chapter 8 of the School Board Policy Library.
I would move that the attachment for the Florida Administrative Code VAB 12D-9 PDF be approved as presented.
Mrs. Zucker, I think we may have skipped an item. I think we're on number 34.
Wait a minute.
Approval to advertise changes to...
I started under new business, so...
Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry. That the board approved to advertisement of the changes to all the policies in Chapter 8 of their policy library as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments? Just for clarification, this is just moving along with our master policy review. Oh, Mrs. Goodwin, I'm sorry, Mrs. Brown, comment?
I just want to make sure that when we make these changes and they're adopted, that they are sent up to that company that keeps ours. Because I remember one time it didn't happen. So I want to make sure there's somebody keeping track of sending that up there when they pass. Thank you.
Dr. Bowden, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that takes place at final adoption from the board, but we update them as the policy manual is adopted. So the resolution in front of you is to advertise, but when it comes back before you for adoption, it's when the changes become final that we'll make our partner aware of that to make sure that they do the legal review.
Mr. Robinson?
I just want to thank, you're going to be seeing these popping up more and more every month, and there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes by staff. And I think, Caroline, you took this one, right? And so we have particular board members assigned to particular policies. So I want to thank Ms. Zucker for working on this one, and for this one encompasses a lot of different entities, and so there's a lot of staff people that were responsible for this, but they, I think, all eventually roll up to Mr. Maltzberry now, so just so you can see the depth and breadth. But again, I just want to thank Ms. Zucker for taking care of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Before taking action, and this really isn't contingent on this, but I know that based on what Mrs. Brown said, and just for clarification, Dr. Bowden, the partner that you were referencing was for the compliance component.
Correct. We have a vendor, and their name escapes me.
It's not Neola. Is this the one? Is this the item? Okay.
Right.
EMC.
EMC. So I'm glad that you brought this up, because and we can move this to a workshop or such, because God bless Kathy over there, who's been running around trying to find the current vendor that we're utilizing. So I think it'll be something we need to address because of the functionality of it, what is actually prompted us to do, and well needed to do this full-scale policy review, but the connectivity was not occurring, and so I think it's well worth the board readdressing whether or not that's the right company or the right practice. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up.
I also want to recognize Mr. Hardy's role.
Yes.
All of these have undergone a legal review, and so each of us have a chapter or two that we're responsible for. Mr. Hardy owns the entire policy manual and has been going through that, and so each of us have a piece, but Mr. Hardy has touched each and every policy, and want to recognize his effort in that regard.
It's been quite enjoyable. Lots of help from lots of folks on the staff.
Right. No, I echo that. Absolutely. Well, good. Like you said, thank you, Eric, Mr. Robinson, for bringing that up. Members, please vote on the motion before you. And the motion passes 5-0. Moving forward with item number 35.
I move the approval of the Sarasota County Schools Mental Health Assistance Allocation Behavior Health Plan for 2018-19.
I have a motion. Second. I have a motion and a second. Any comments? Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, there's been a lot of cool things about being on the school board. I get to do work days, which are cool. Most of them don't involve any children feeding food or digging trenches. But one of the cool things is I get to give away my salaries, and so one of the things I got to give away my salary for was for a social black belt. Got to do it down in Northport, got to do it down in Lower Nokomis, and got to see the impact that it has. And so when I saw our allocation of a behavioral health plan, I was a little saddened not to see social black belt as part of that plan. So I'd like to make an amendment. I don't know if it'll get passed, but I'd like to make an amendment to include social black belt for $250,000. That's how much we had in the budget for last year, to include social black belt in our mental health plan. We spend millions of dollars hardening, actually tens of millions of dollars on security, and I think when we see $1 million for a mental health plan, it just seems disproportional. I know that there are other things besides that, but I see these programs, and I'm making a motion to have social black belt included in our mental health plan.
I have a motion. Is there a second? I will second it. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any comment on the amended motion?
This is, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Zucker was forward.
Yes, but I'm not speaking to the amended motion. I'm speaking to the body of our, sorry, my throat is crazy today, the body of our recommendation for the...
Okay, then I'll pause you. If you want to postpone it, I'll bring back to you when we go to the main amendment. Are there any comments on the amendment?
That was where I was going.
Mrs. Brown.
And this is procedural. I'm not sure how we would do it, but I remember up in the legislature, you couldn't just add something on. There's a finite amount, and if you're going to be adding another expense to it, you either have to add more money to it or take it away something else. You have to balance it out. I mean,
vote against it.
So do you know where you're taking it from?
I guess it's going to come in from reserves. It's going to, I mean, it's how we do stuff all the time. We have stuff every day. Trucks, cars, hardening. I mean, we spend money all the time. And I think when it comes to mental health, I think this is such an important aspect of safety and security. And we spend $25 million hardening the schools. You can do everything that you can do, but if we're not looking at the underlying causes that create these situations, the cost to society in our schools far exceed any cost that we're talking about now. Now, when we talk about mental health, that now is not the time to nickel and dime when you talk about mental health. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Were there any comments on the amendment?
Yes.
Mrs. Zucker.
Yes.
To be fair, go ahead, Mrs. Zucker.
One of the things is on this amendment is that you are bringing this forward for us to tell the superintendent that he should spend this money when they have already put together a plan for us to utilize the dollars that were allocated. So I don't understand why you didn't speak to Dr. Bowden, or why it's not part of the plan that we have, and why an amendment like this should come up before us without us having some discussion beforehand, especially when we have a plan.
Thank you. Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, I've spoken to a number of people, and I've spoken to Dr. Cortman, who's a friend of mine who's sitting out in the audience and who developed this wonderful program and wrote a book, which I just recommended to 2 people this past weekend to read. My concern is scalability, the ability of doing in a year's time for $250,000 being able to train every student in this district, and I don't think that it is possible to do that, and I don't have a roadmap as to how that would be done. I don't think that anything that Mrs. Alberts has put into her plan should be removed in lieu of money for social black belt. I think social black belt does have a place in our school district. I think it's a wonderful 10-week program, but how we would accomplish that and sole source this for this kind of money gives me concern, because I think that we're barking up a tree that might come to bite us because we have not done the due diligence. Now, I did speak to Mrs. Alberts, and I did speak to the superintendent about this, and I have some great concerns about it, so I will not be supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown, was this on the amendment?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I too have, well, I don't know enough about the social black belt to say I'm going to put the money in or not, but just the way that it's being done. I mean, when we don't even know for sure whether we're taking out another program or we're going into the reserves, how much money is in the reserves, I don't think this is the appropriate place to do this. The appropriate place to do this, I believe, is sitting and talking with the superintendent to try to find an amendment in his budget. Because when we don't even know if you're going to take it out of this budget or could take it out of reserves, I don't think this is the place to do it, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Dr. Bowden, for point of clarification, because I've heard us talk about social black belt and see the successes of it for some time, for 4 years, I feel like, and for the hope that it would continue to grow and foster. There's a couple things that I just wanted to clarify. With currently, what's the status of social black belt in Sarasota County schools?
So social black belt was vetted for inclusion in the mental health allocation plan. Ultimately, the committee made a decision to allocate those resources to other programs and contracts to meet our requirements under the law. No one, including myself, who's had interaction with social black belt, has a bad thing to say about it. So this is not a decision that social black belt has no place in our schools. It is just to meet the requirements of this allocation and the way that we best serve our students. That committee made a decision that it would not come and be included in the mental health allocation plan. That does not preclude individual schools from using social black belt. There are a number. I know Venice High School has a program. It is a lengthy program. It does have some positive benefits, but it is not something that we're going to mandate as part of the district or fund at the district level. But we would certainly encourage our schools that where they believe it fits into their curriculum and where appropriate, that they evaluate it, and we believe that they'll come to a very favorable conclusion. But it was decided not to be excluded from the district, but to be excluded from the mental health allocation plan.
And for follow-up, is that currently at the school level? Is it being funded solely through third-party nonprofits? Is what I'm thinking of, or is it being utilized from school funds currently?
Last year, we made some provision for it. We looked for wider implementation. We got as far as presenting it to some of our principals, at which they were very positive about it, but we did not implement. There are a couple schools that have implemented. I believe Pineview, Venice High School, Triad, all have engaged. Venice probably has the most long-standing relationship with the Social Black Belt program.
Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Goodwin.
Social black belt I have seen in the classroom, it does a marvelous job for students. But what you're saying is that each school would have to evaluate, and here we go back again, and it's been kind of difficult for the Courtmans to really wrap their arms around this from a standpoint of working with each budget or each school district. So we're saying now that we're back to working with it on a school basis, so the school would actually allocate from their budget the money and the time and requirements. 10 weeks is difficult to fit into every school schedule, so how are you recommending that they would do that if in fact they're doing it? I know we're doing it in a 4th grade health class at Pineview. We were doing it in a Hope class in 9th grade at Venice High. And at Triad, I don't exactly know how they're doing it there, but I understand that's an alternative school. It's been very helpful to them. How would you recommend, or what are your recommendations?
Well, there is not a universal recommendation, and I think you've gotten to the heart of the matter is where does it fit within the curriculum? I've had in-depth conversations with Dr. Courtman and trying to target just a couple grade levels and even gotten some pushback from principals of saying, I don't think it belongs there, it belongs somewhere else. So it's difficult from the landings to say we're going to implement this in all 6th grade classrooms. I do think it's most appropriate for our school level leaders where they believe it is appropriate to implement it, but there is no answer to say it best fits in this classroom or this course.
So for clarification, if there was a school that did want to implement it, where can we allocate a pot of money to support that implementation? Is that okay?
We currently have not included it in the mental health allocation, and it does not include in your operating budget as you sit here today.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with some of the statements even Mrs. Brown made that it's hard to, well, first of all, we can make budget amendments, certainly. We're moving towards voting on a future budget. I would like to see, I've heard about Social Blackboard for years, and what I get concerned about is where it loses its momentum is where funding comes, and I don't, that kills me, is that we find something that works, that schools want to utilize it, but we aren't prioritizing to support and fund it. So I'd like to see a way that we could include that in a different manner. Is it appropriate to have it in item number 35 and included it for the baseline from the state standpoint? I'm open to that, but I would like to see that take place. And then Mrs. Goodwin and Mrs. Zucker. Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, I would like to see a plan put together to do social black belts. I think we can't depend on the schools to do it. I think that it does have merit, and it should be used at multiple schools. I don't want to take away anything from Mrs. Albert's budget for mental health. I know that she has put, the committee has put a lot of thought into doing this, and all of the recommendations that she has done are universal for all schools. The CHAMPS program, some of the things are free of charge, hopefully. The Sandy Hook Promise that we're going to be using, some of these things will be used universally. What I would like to know is how can we best install and best implement social black belt on a grand scale, looking at it and really coming up with some thoughtful ideas. So I would say for me, I will not include it in this item 35 vote, but I would like to find a way that we can implement it. $250,000 is a lot of money. And if that's across the whole system, that's for every student. I find that it would be difficult to do every student in 1 year, to train every teacher and train all the students. So I'm looking for more information, more ways of doing this, and that's what I would like to see happen next.
Mrs. Zucker, and then I think we can close on the amendment.
Well, what I'm going to do is to call a question because I have heard from everyone and I know exactly where we are standing. So I call a question.
Very good. Voice vote on just, Mr. Robinson, for clarity, can you please repeat the amended motion?
To amend the mental health plan to include $250,000 for social black belt. Okay.
It'll be a voice
vote on.
Yep. Yep. So we're voting on the amendments.
You're voting on approving the calling the question.
No, you don't need to vote.
I heard there was no objection to that.
Yeah,
so
so we're voting
now
on the
you will
amendment.
be voting on the amendment.
Mr. Robinson.
Aye.
Mrs. Goodwin.
No.
Mrs. Zucker.
Nay.
Mrs. Brown.
Nay.
And the chair votes aye. So the amendment fails 3-2. And moving to the motion on item number 35 as was presented. Mrs. Zucker.
No, I should be off.
Okay. Did you want to speak to the motion? Are there any comments on the motion? I will add that I had asked, I know this was initially put on consent, and I wanted it pulled, and I'm glad now that it was pulled, but it wasn't, I didn't foresee that. I wanted just to make sure the community knew that there's been a lot of work around this topic as well. As we go forward with the safety and security discussion, it's multifaceted. I know that this has been a long time coming, and this is a key component. I want to ensure that it's a good opportunity for our community to see what we're doing and continue collaborating with our organizations in the community. So, of course, so Mrs. Brown and then Mrs. Goodwin.
I want to applaud our staff for pulling this together. It was initially given as a response to Parkland, the shooting, but this response is going to be so much broader than just helping to prevent a shooting in our area. You know, we're looking at everyday problems some children's had. We're looking at, drug problems a child might have, a suicide, all kinds of issues that our children have day in and day out. I know there was just so much focus on, stopping a shooter. But, this is what comes down to when Mrs. Goodwin was talking about softening the insides. This is what we need to do on a regular basis to help our students succeed when they've got problems. And I think if we can identify them early, we can take care of them. But, I think, as a state, as a nation, what we do for mental health is woeful, but at least we're getting it done right on this. And this is one area that I think this legislature knocked it out of the park when they tried to address the Parkland issues.
Thank you. Mrs. Goodwin.
When Senator Kathleen Pasadomo first came up with mental health as an issue, it was long before Parkland, she realized and identified that we have many, many students in our system who are suffering, have anguish from trauma, have anguish from many mental health issues, and she actually asked for about $200 million, and they laughed, and bumped her down to a considerable amount less than $100 million. So we are lucky to get almost $100,000 for this, and for that we are grateful, but we know this is not enough. This is only a first step. I can only envision and hope that the legislature next year will come forward with more money in the mental health silo, if you will, so that we will be able to do more things next year, because we know that we have many children that need attention. When you look at some of the wraparound services that some of the for-profit charter schools are doing with failing schools and others, like in Jefferson County, where they've taken over an entire system, they have extra money, $2,000 per student extra, to do wraparound services such as this. We need that money here. We have now more Title I schools that we have included this year, but not more money, unfortunately. So the challenges that the staff has in pupil support services are great. The requests are great. The need is great. But we have a lot of sickness, a lot of mental health concerns that we have. We have a lot of issues with suicide prevention and other things, and it's going to take all of us working together to find a way and find a solution to some of these problems. But we're only at the infancy, and we can only hope that in the next years to come, we will be doing more in this regard as well.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson. Excuse me.
You can call me Eric, but not Mrs.
I'm sorry.
Draw the line somewhere. I do want to thank Sonia for all the work she's done on this. Personally, clearly, I think we've spent a lot of time talking about hardening sheriffs. We think safety and security as the men in green. But that is not how we are going to keep our schools safe. We are going to keep our schools safe through the works of Sonia. We're going to keep our schools safe by the environment that we foster within those schools. Chief DePino said it great when she came and met with us. You're not going to build yourself out of the problem. That's not how you solve the problem. Chief DePino said that even if you make your schools like a jail, can you imagine how people act in jail? And that's not what we should be striving for. And so I look forward to champion to make sure that the work that Sonia's doing in the mental health becomes more of a central point of how we keep our schools safe. No offense to you, Mr. Andreas, but Sonia's the key to it. I mean, if locking the kids up and is not how we solve this, it's through the hard work of people like Sonia and her team. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other additional comments, item number 35. Members, please vote on the motion before you as presented. I'm just going to go to voice vote. The motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the next item of new business.
Item number 36, the motion to appoint a 2018-2019 Value Adjustment Board representative and alternate from the Sarasota County School Board as presented. And that would be Mr. Eric Robinson, and as an alternate, Chairman Bridget Ziegler.
Very good. I have a motion before us. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments? I added this to from an official standpoint because out of all the committees required, this is the only one that's statutorily required, and I think this is a more appropriate way to do it, just given that versus a discussion. So thank you very much. I humbly accept. And unless there's any other comments, members, please vote on the motion before you, listing Eric Robinson as the Value Adjustment Board representative and Bridget Ziegler as the alternate.
You're not the alternative.
I'll take the alternative.
Yeah, you'll take the
Please vote. And the motion passes 5-0. Moving to the next order of new business, item of new business.
Instructional classified personnel report be approved.
Yeah. Can you, is your mic on?
Second.
I have a motion and a second on item number 37, approval of instructional classified personnel report be approved. Any comments? Seeing none, please vote. And anxiously awaiting. And the motion passes 4-1. Moving on to the next item of new business, number 38.
I move that the Sarasota County School Board adopt the Greater Florida Consortium of School Boards resolution on Amendment 8 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can you, for the record, clarify who seconded there? Mrs. Zucker?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments? Mr. Robinson?
I understand the reason why this is on here. There are plenty of things on Amendment 8 that, I don't support. I don't think that we should have for example, I don't think we should have the state dictating the charter schools. I mean, I think I voted against every single charter thing, including the merger of the Sarasota Military Academy, renewal of charter schools, approval of charter schools. I voted against. I don't think there's any. I think if we had a charter review, I'd probably vote against that too. I mean, I've voted against everything having to do with them. But, I still think it should be done here local. But my issue has to do with, do I want a government body telling the citizens how to vote? And that's what my problem is. I know I'm going to get in trouble with a bunch of people, but, term limits. I think term limits should be done at the ballot box. That's my personal feeling. You can, especially on a local race, I think at a local race, you can unseat Eric Robinson. It shouldn't be that hard. I'm sure a lot of people are going to try. So I don't believe in term limits for school board members, but the issue isn't the underlying, whether I agree with or don't agree with the underlying Amendment 8, which we are all able to do individually to tell people, but we didn't pass a resolution saying that we supported the referendum, even though all 5 of us said that we did, but we purposely, tried not to, tiptoe through that. And so I just don't think that I would not want my government telling me how to vote. And next time it may be an issue that I don't agree with. Now it happens to be, I'm not saying how I'm going to vote or not, but I'm very sympathetic to the resolution and what they want to say. But the question is what happens when it's a resolution that I'm not sympathetic with? What happens when it's a resolution that I don't support? I really don't want my government using their resources and time and money dictating to me how I should or shouldn't vote. I think that young lady who came and spoke earlier, she got it right. It's up to the citizens to vet that. It's not up for the government to we are not the master, we're the slave, we're the servant. We shouldn't be telling down onto the people how they should or shouldn't vote. We can inform them. We're more than welcome to tell them how these things impact the school district. I have no problem with us telling people, having, Tallahassee dictating how we do charter schools, but holding us responsible, like the young lady from Pops came and spoke. I think that has a lot of value and merit. But again, top-down government to the people, telling them how to vote. I just that's not who I am. So I won't be supporting the motion for those reasons.
Thank you. Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, looking at this amendment, if I talk about term limits, it'll sound like I'm self-serving, but every 2 years, there's a turnover of school board members statewide about 40%. I've done research in the last 8 years to substantiate that. But the one that's so egregious to me is the one about moving the authority to Tallahassee, because it doesn't say anything about charter in that. So they left it as broad a brush as they could, they being the Constitutional Revision Commission, the CRC, so that it could be starting a school of giraffes or anything else that they might choose to do. They'd have the ability to do that. And what I'm concerned about, and we have a number of our charter school partners sitting here in the audience today, many of which I'm close friends with and care a great deal about. But that would really throw a wedge, I think, between public schools and the charter schools, because what will happen then is that those choices will be made elsewhere, and so I think that will be the first in a bell to widen the gap between public schools and public charter schools, and I would not want to see that. Local control is very important. Top down, as Eric said, is not a good thing, and we're finding that in several amendments that are coming down the pike in November, that the business of local control is taken away and replaced with something that says the legislature is all powerful and they will make decisions for us, such as homestead exemption. So that's one of the reasons why I think this is a good thing.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown.
I, too, will support this because I think it's our duty to stand up and say there is something wrong with this amendment, what's being proposed. I know it's wrapped up in two very good things that a lot of people might support, but there's something in the middle that I believe was purposely made cloudy. You wouldn't see it, wouldn't understand it, and I think it's a Trojan horse, and I think we need to do what we can to let people know where we stand on it. This does not say we are going to spend any money or do any resources or do anything else on this except say we're opposed to it. It's not saying we're going to spend any money doing this, but I think there are organizations that are out there that will use our stance on this as a support for why this would be bad. So I'll support this.
Thank you. Mrs. Zucker.
I think they've said everything that needs to be said. I will support this referendum. I was there when it was drawn up. I agreed.
Resolution. You said referendum.
Resolution, referendum, whatever it is we're doing. I will support this resolution opposing Amendment 8. And not only that, I would suggest that you all go out and look at Amendment 8 if you haven't already, and also vote no, because it really does limit the school board's authority to do things. And Amendment 8 has 3 pieces in one amendment. So they've combined 3 issues into one amendment, and they tried to put one in there that you would like, but the other 2 you shouldn't like. So, I mean, it's a crazy thing, but I would vote no.
Thank you. I actually share what Mr. Robinson said. I understand why there is heartburn over this. I do. However, I don't believe it's appropriate or the right role of this governing body to take action and tell voters how to vote. I think it's a tiptoe of a line on political activity as under our authority as a board. So I will be voting no on this because I fundamentally just disagree on us taking a position on a constitutional amendment. I would encourage anyone else to go out and educate yourself on the amendments, to take your own position and not lean on an organization or a board to tell you how to do so. So
hold on.
All those, okay. Mrs. Zucker?
What's on here is the Greater Florida Consortium of School Boards has taken a position on Amendment 8. So it's not just a group of people. There are 10 or 11 counties that are contained in this, and we have the largest population of students and the largest number of legislators